What is up, guys? Well, part 2 of season 6, the final season of Cobra Kai, has now been released on Netflix. I was able to check the episodes out a little bit early, and now it's time to give my thoughts. I have covered every single season of this show up to this point, so I'm going to put a playlist up here as well as one at the end of the video if you want to see my thoughts on every single season. But to kind of recap, for the most part, I've enjoyed every single season of this show overall. But the last 2 seasons, season 5 and this season so far, have been my least favorite of the bunch so far, simply because it feels to me like the show has pushed past its natural point to end the story. It started off as a continuation of Karate Kid and the ideals and the themes of that show, or those movies, I should say. And we've had a lot of different character arcs. We've had changing alliances, we've had the growth and as well as the regression of certain dynamics between characters, namely between Johnny and Daniel LaRusso. And eventually we got to a point in season 4 where it felt like we're heading to this natural conclusion where we're going to wipe out Cobra Kai. Johnny and Daniel are going to be able to put their differences aside. All the right people are going to be on the right side. And by the end of season 5, despite me having some significant issues with season 5, they accomplished that. We got to what I would consider the natural ending of that show. Cobra Kai has been defeated, and now everybody's on the same side. We're all one big happy Miyagi-Do family. But then we have a season 6. And we also have a Karate Kid movie that is coming out at some point next year. And so then they announced final season, plus we're going to do it in 3 release chunks over the next year. And it's going to end a few months before the Karate Kid movie comes out. And you can presume that however this show decides to end, some form of storyline is going to dovetail into whatever they're going to do with this Karate Kid movie. Now, one thing that is important to note, which I noted in my review of part 1 of this season, is that it's very difficult to review a season in chunks. But unfortunately, that's the way that Netflix wanted to release it, and that's the way that as a content creator, you have to roll with the punches, no pun intended. And so reviewing a show, or a season rather, where you've only seen 5 episodes of it, which was the last review, and now 10 episodes of the 15. Of course, there is an element of you can't fully review the season yet. You can't fully put your thoughts in stone because things could get better or things could get worse with the introduction of the next batch of episodes. By the time we get the last 5 episodes of this show, a lot of my issues with the first 2/3 could be resolved. A lot of them could be solidified or worsened. You really don't know. So please save your breath, save your thumb strength with telling me, how can you say this if you haven't seen the whole season? Look, I get it, but this is just the way that I'm forced to give you my thoughts. Netflix wanted to release it in chunks. I have to give you my thoughts in chunks. But really quick before we dive into my thoughts on this set of episodes, while everybody in Cobra Kai uses their fists to defend themselves against crime, you can use the sponsor of today's video, Aura, to defend yourself against identity theft. Have you ever Googled yourself and been shocked to find out how much of your personal information was just readily available for anybody to read on these public listing sites? Well, the unfortunate reality is that data brokers make an absolute killing selling all of your personal information to robocallers and spammers and pretty much anybody who's willing to shell out money for all of your info. Your full name, address, email, phone number, closest living relatives, even your medical history. It's all out there. Well, luckily the sponsor of today's video, Aura, is here to help by identifying the data brokers that are leaking this information and even submitting opt-out requests on your behalf. Legally, they do have to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it extremely difficult for you to do that. So just offload all that heavy lifting to Aura. Recently, AT&T revealed that over 73 million customer records, existing and former, were released onto the dark web. They recommended that those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes and fraud alerts. Well, Aura does all of this for you inside of one app. No need to fill your phone with apps and have multiple subscriptions just because a multi-billion-dollar corporation couldn't keep your information secure. I value my privacy, and if you value yours, you can go to aura.com/Cody Leach or click the link in the video description to start your 2-week free trial today. And thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring today's video. So where part 1, I think, was easily the weakest batch of episodes we have had so far, I can tell you that part 2, to start off my positives, I do enjoy these 5 episodes a good bit more than I did the 5 that was in part 1. Now, we still have some issues we'll get into, but overall, I felt like this was the more fun section of the story so far. It's focused almost entirely on the actual Sekai Takai tournament, so you get a lot more fights. There's a lot more intensity. The stakes are a bit higher. The main thing that I enjoyed about these 5 episodes, there's a lot of really funny moments. There's some great dialogue moments. There's some great situational humor. There's one where Hawk literally cock blocks Dimitri that I laughed out loud and immediately texted my buddy Sean and was like, oh, damn, Hawk with the cock block. What the hell? So there's some really good moments of humor in this middle section of this final season that I really appreciated. And of course, it goes without saying, like, I love these characters, so I enjoy spending more time with them. Even if it feels like it's kind of extended time, we're on borrowed time at this point, I still like spending time with them. The character dynamics are fun. The way that they write and the performances of these characters are all fun. So there's still that Cobra Kai magic there. I also was pleasantly surprised on, for the most part, how they followed up the storyline regarding Tori yet again reverting back to the Cobra Kai alliance. That's pretty much how they ended the first part of season 6 is, oh my God, Tori's with them again. And where they very easily could have gone all the way back to season 2 Tori and just had her go full psycho and just absolutely scorched earth with all of the relationships that she has built in Cobra Kai. They don't go that way. And pretty much everybody in Cobra Kai, for the most part, kind of approaches her with a lot of grace, which was really refreshing to see. Whether it is Robbie and his heartbreak, whether it is Sam and her heartbreak, the conversations and the character dynamics that you get between Tori and these characters feel mature. They feel like they've advanced these characters to where they're now college age, and they're not as reactionary and as emotional as they were when they were, middle schoolers or freshmen in high school, whatever age they were when we started this show. And so that was a nice surprise. I think very easily they could have really backslid with her character and how everybody treats her character. And it was nice to see that everybody on the Miyagi-Do side was still like trying to keep those bridges open with her to show her that we understand you made this rash decision. We understand why you made this rash decision. We don't agree with it. It's hurtful that you did it, but please come back. And we want you to know that open arms are here. Like, I just liked that side of things. Tori is a character that has been a very interesting character arc over these last 4 or 5 seasons, where first full-on psycho, totally irredeemable, and then they start to give you a little bit more reasons to sympathize with her and understand why she's that way, and then they actually grew her character throughout season 4 and 5. And so I appreciated, despite thinking that it was kind of a very easy direction to go to just yet again bring her back to Cobra Kai, I appreciated the way that they followed through with that. One of my favorite parts of this section of episodes, there is a really emotionally potent scene between William Zabka and Xolo Maridueña, between Johnny and Miguel. Now, those two characters, their relationship has had some of the best acting, some of the most emotionally satisfying moments, some of the most emotionally devastating moments in this show. And there's an exchange that happens between them on a plane on like the 3rd or 4th episode of this batch that I think is in competition for the most like emotionally satisfying and some of the best acting that we've seen in this show, especially from William Zabka. They're at odds with each other, but they come back together over the love of their family that they are forming. And it just really, it choked me up. Now, I think it's the best scene that we have gotten from Johnny as far as an emotional character. Miguel and Xolo continues to just be like one of the best actors of this new generation that come out of Cobra Kai. So as far as a show that's very focused on camp and silliness and over-the-top zaniness and action and melodrama, those really emotionally potent moments stand out so much as kind of a counter programming to all the silliness. And I think that scene in this batch of episodes is arguably the best scene of emotional moments that we have gotten in this entire show. And I'm confident that as much as they're stumbling for me personally with a number of storylines and characters in this final season, by the time we get to the end of this show, I'm confident that the way that they wrap up Miguel and Johnny's storyline, specifically with Carmen and the baby and them forming this family. I'm confident that's going to be the most emotionally satisfying and the most gratifying storyline of this entire show by the time it's ended. And while it's not a big element of this season, I really like how Daniel's wife continues to be like this badass referee where she just grabs people and she's like, you motherfuckers are going to get together now, just fucking figure your shit out. Like, she was kind of that way to a less extent, to a less aggressive extent with Tori and Sam a little earlier, but now she's doing it with Kenny and her son. And so it's funny when you get those scenes where she's just like, enough of this karate bullshit. Like, figure your stuff out so we can move on. This is ridiculous. We've been doing this for 5 seasons now, gentlemen. I appreciate that about her character. Again, small piece of it, but the little bit that we get, I had fun with. Moving on to the mixed of this section of episodes, basically the entirety of all of the actual karate, everything in this actual tournament, all the fight scenes, all of the tournament segments, which there's a lot of in this segment of episodes. There are some really interesting and cool things that they do to change up the dynamics a bit, but at the same time, it goes so ridiculously over the top in a way that this show has always kind of leaned into that a bit. You know, it's never really been grounded, but there's always been somewhat of a tether to reality. There's been moments throughout this show where they have abandoned that entirely, and it just strains all credibility. They do that possibly the most with this segment of episodes with the Sekai Takai tournament. Now, the things that I liked, there are certain segments where you have teams of characters that are put together that are not only interesting dynamics of how they're teamed up, but they have to like fight on this risen platform, and the whole idea is not to get knocked off, and there's a lot of cool action and tension that comes along with that. Again, something different. We're 6 seasons in, regular karate matches aren't going to have the same pizzazz that they had back in season 1. So I liked some of those. I do think that they still have a good job. They still do a good job at pairing up certain characters where it creates a little bit of drama and tension where you kind of want both characters that are in this matchup to win for different reasons for their character arcs, and it creates a little bit of this turmoil within you as a viewer, not knowing which way you really want to root. But you also have absolutely ridiculous elements here where it's no longer a karate tournament. It's kind of like a giant WWE wrestling match where they just have the entire karate teams fighting each other at once. And so it's just like a big 15, 20 people brawl. And while that is different aside from the finale of season 2 at the school, it just doesn't quite make sense in the context of what they're doing. Like, that's not what I understand or what the lore of this show and the movies have understood karate to be. And so it's just gone over the top for me. It's kind of jumped the shark with the karate elements where now it just seems ridiculous. And it's still fun to watch. It's not like you sit there and you're just absolutely turned off and it's destroyed, but it just loses that grounded element. It loses that tether that I've always enjoyed, even at this show's silliest moments. So while we certainly have had multi-people brawls in this show before, it's usually outside of the mat. It's at the school. It's when they raid the LaRusso's house. When you have that now be an actual official part of a karate tournament, it just feels silly. And not to spoil things, but the way that they decide to handle the final match, where now it is like all things are on the table, all bets are off, this is it. One team's going to come away the winner. The way that they decide to execute that felt like a giant cheat to me. It felt like they had so many characters and so many different character dynamics and rivalries and character arcs and drama and turmoil going on that they wanted to try to find a way to quickly resolve as much of that as possible without actually developing and building out really effective dramatic ways to do that, which they have done very well in past seasons. And so they just find a way to get it all done in 10 minutes. And I didn't like it at all. Like, I was actually much higher on this batch of episodes until the last 15 minutes or so of this season section. And for me, the way they decided to resolve this tournament just it really left a bad taste in my mouth. I was like, okay, now that this whole thing feels like it meant nothing now. What was the point of all this? Followed up immediately, which again, I'm not going to get into spoilers. You can watch these episodes now, by the way. They're a very quick watch. But following up immediately with a way to end off things on a cliffhanger yet again for the next batch of episodes that we're going to get next year. And what they decided to do to leave us off did not work for me at all, for a variety of reasons. One, it felt way overly dramatic. Two, it involves a character that I could not give two fucks about. So the intended effect of this is absolutely lost on me because I don't give a shit about this character, and I just don't care. They've done nothing to make me invest myself in them. They've done absolutely nothing to make me like them, which is kind of the point. And so where things end off, where you're supposed to have like this shocking moment of like, oh my God, what now? And then you have to wait. I was like, who cares? And it honestly left off at a point now where, and I don't mean this in a good way, I really have no idea what they're going to do to resolve all this in 5 episodes. Like I have no outlook on how 5 more episodes of this show is going to wrap everything up in a satisfying way. Maybe they'll pull it off, and I hope that they do. I would love to be proved wrong. But for that to be the ending note and the thing that we're going to have to resolve in the next 5 episodes, we have better things to resolve. We have more important things to resolve. We have characters and character arcs I actually give a shit about to resolve. And this being something that's obviously going to take a large chunk of the focus away in the final stretch of these episodes just feels like a bad miscalculation for me. The last thing that I'll say specific to these 5 episodes, which certainly was an element of the first 5, I don't remember if I got into it at all, but there's been like this mystery element of Mr. Miyagi that's been a large subplot in regard to Daniel specifically for this final season, where he realizes that Mr. Miyagi has fought in this tournament and he's on like this obsessive quest to figure out why he was there. And for many reasons, this storyline's just not working for me. One, I think we have gone way over the top with Daniel LaRusso's obsession with Mr. Miyagi. I totally get why he's like the most important man in his life and why he changed his life and why he wants to hold true to his values. He wants to teach his kids. He wants to teach these other kids. All that makes sense. But many times throughout the last couple of seasons, like they've almost taken it to a comedic overreach where it's like Daniel's entire life is Mr. Miyagi's legacy, more so than his wife, more so than his kids, more so than anything else. And the fact that he is so over the top obsessed with this one little mystery, it just feels like they had nothing to do with Daniel that was interesting. And so they just sent him on this quest to give him something to do, which I also suspect is going to be what's going to tie him into what brings him in contact with Jackie Chan, which will probably be teased at the end of the season and then lead into the movie. And I just don't find any of that compelling. The mystery in and of itself, I also just don't find to be compelling. Presumably the answer that we're going to get is something that's going to give more context to why Mr. Miyagi never liked tournaments, why from the first Karate Kid movie, he always urged Daniel not to fight, not to engage, not to do anything that's using karate as a sport. And I just don't feel like we needed extra context for that. I don't feel like Mr. Miyagi's intentions and his reasons for why that is his ideology was ever a mystery. Using karate for defense only is the most noble way to look at karate. So using it as a sport or as a way to get back at bullies, that's obviously less than noble, and that has always made sense throughout those entire run of original films. I mean, they even brought it back up in the 3rd film about him not wanting Daniel, not even training Daniel to fight in this tournament until it was literally life or death. And so having to add this extra mystery of like, ooh, we're finally going to get the answer to this. The answer that we've always had was satisfying enough for me. Again, it just feels like you're trying to invent storylines because you've burned through all your natural storylines and now you have really not a whole lot to fill a whole final season with, let alone an extended final season. So this whole mystery of Mr. Miyagi and the things that we get into, the very small revelation that we get in this section of 5 episodes, it's just not compelling to me. It's nothing that's really driving any kind of curiosity or tension for me. And as far as stretching believability, there has always been moments and sequences or even entire storylines in this show that really strain credibility and ask you to really to stretch plausibility to a point of being too much for a lot of us, as far as like full-on felonies being committed by characters and nobody doing anything sensible about it. You know, we've had seasons where the Cobra Kai kids are like physically assaulting each other, breaking arms, breaking and entering and shit like that, and nobody ever really does anything about it. We've had things where Terry Silver and Kreese have done multiple felonies and nobody ever calls the cops on them. And you have a sequence in this batch of episodes regarding Daniel that is, I mean, arguably the worst of anything that we've seen a character go through as far as being illegal and being just flat out things that you could call the cops and get a lot of people thrown in jail for. And the fact that that never happens just starts to make you feel like some of these characters are just idiots. And I don't want to feel like Daniel's an idiot. Like when you go through what Daniel went through and his first motivation is just, I got to get back to the tournament. What the fuck are we doing, man? Like, come on. Like, I can't spoil what happens, but there's just no getting around how stupid that is. And that's another thing where the show is starting to go on where they have to keep ramping things up. And we've already strained credibility quite a bit a number of seasons ago with things that are being forgiven and the cops aren't getting involved with. So this show pushes that to its biggest stretch so far. And the last thing that I'll say, which I've kind of already been touching on, but it is an extension of how I felt about the first 5 episodes, is that not only does it feel like we've burned through a lot of the most compelling stories of what we can do with these characters, but we've resolved a number of them. And this final season has intentionally reverted characters back to where they were in previous seasons just to manufacture something to do with them. And so you just have a lot of really uninteresting melodrama that's going on between especially the teenage characters. But even with the like Daniel and Johnny, yet again, we're at this tournament. We're on the same side. We have supposedly gotten rid of a lot of our bullshit with each other, and we're trying to fight this greater evil together. And yet they still have the same petty man-child rivalry with each other that they had in season 1, where they just don't want to listen. Johnny doesn't want to do the Miyagi-Do way. Daniel doesn't want to do the Eagle Fang way. And that was funny. That was compelling. That was hilarious and entertaining for a chunk of seasons. But we're past that point for me, where it's just like, guys, you're doing the same shit you did in season 3 and season 4 and season 5, and it's nowhere near as compelling as the versions that we got in those past seasons. And even with the kids' melodrama, with just all the relationship drama, and Sam having this guy that has a crush on her, but she's loyal to Miguel, and you have Robbie who loves Tori, but Tori's on the opposite side now, and then you have Dimitri and Hawk that have been talking about college rivalries for now 10 episodes, and it's like, this isn't compelling, guys. Like this really is just all a bunch of different elements, which is a long-winded way of saying that this show has extended itself past its natural end. Now we have nothing compelling to do with these characters. So we're just going to kind of revert back and copy and paste things that we've done in the past to try to get 15 more episodes out of this show so that we can have a smooth transition over to this movie that we hope is going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's just disappointing. Again, I know I'm being very negative in this last section here, but this is a show that I still enjoy. Like, I'm still on board. I'm still hoping that they're going to land the ship in a way that's satisfying. I'm still overall having fun. I watched all 5 of these episodes in one sitting and had a pretty good time watching them, but we've all had shows that we loved that have extended itself a bit too far. And while you're still invested, while you still overall like things, you acknowledge that things aren't as good as they were. And you can actually point out ways in which they're just manufacturing more stories. Like Dexter season 5, Dexter season 6, I enjoyed watching them as they were airing to an extent. But the whole time I was like, yeah, this ain't Dexter season 1 through 4 for sure. And that's how I feel about Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai 1 through 4, and even through 5 to a certain extent. Really good writing throughout, a lot of interesting character dynamics, changing allegiances, and having rivalries aired out, and continuing a lot of the themes and stuff that we were exploring in the Karate Kid movies and bringing it to this new generation. They found a really compelling way to keep that going for a number of seasons. But I just feel like they've run out of that now. Still entertaining, still has that Cobra Kai charm, but narratively, everything that they're doing is just not compelling to me. And if this wasn't the final season, I would be very worried about the future, because even just the tournament in and of itself doesn't feel like it makes sense with the ideals and the themes that this show and the movies have always tried to teach us. It feels like the antithesis of that. Now we have to be the best in the world. We defeated Cobra Kai. We ran him out of the valley. We wiped out Kreese. We wiped out Terry Silver. That was the conclusion. That was the climax of the show. That was all last season. So that's pretty much where I'm at. It's still kind of the same thing that I was saying in season 1, the first batch of episodes of season 6, where I'm enjoying it enough. I'm having fun. It's still fun to be had. I get some people, especially like younger people that watch this show, that are much more dialed into the teenage storylines than they are the characters from the Karate Kid movies, still thinking that this show is firing all cylinders and loving how much bigger and more epic it's getting. But what I go to this show for, what I have gotten the most out of this show with, it's just not translating over well to this final season. So we'll see what happens with this final stretch of 5 episodes that we're going to get next year. I imagine that by the time that things end, I'm going to be pretty steadfast that this is the weakest season of the show, but hopefully they end it in a way where I'm still at least satisfied with where things end, because I do genuinely love this show. I love this franchise going all the way back to when I was a kid. I would hate for them to leave off on a sour note and kill any interest that I have in this movie. But yeah, it is just, things are okay. Things are okay in this final season, but I wish they would have found a way to end the show at its peak, like very few shows are able to do. Very few shows know when to get out. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Click over here for all my 2024 new release movie reviews. Click up here for all my Cobra Kai coverage. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Check out Aura in the video description below. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my thoughts on the final stretch of episodes in a few months. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.